No. No problem. Hello, good evening. Thank you so much for being here, all of you. Yeah, of course, I can understand that you all come for our special guest at this 9th October lecture, a joint initiative of Raam op Rusland, and the Rode Hoed. So very happy to see all of you. My name is Kisha Hekster. I work for the Dutch public broadcaster NOS as EU and NATO correspondent. We've seen each other also in the past, so I'm really happy that I can guide you through this evening. That's actually quite easy because those of you who have been here before know the format. We will start first briefly with Mr. Bert Koenders, former Minister of Foreign Affairs, who will introduce our main guest, Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya. And then afterwards it will be Mrs. Tsikhanouskaya, who will give the lecture, the October lecture, with about Belarus caught between Russia, Ukraine, and NATO. I'm really curious what you're going to say. It's still a secret to us, so we're very much looking forward. Afterwards, there will be a Q&A here, and then it will be your turn to ask all the pressing questions you have for about half an hour. We try to end at 9:30, 9:45, because we started a little bit late now. So let's not waste more time introducing ourselves. I would like to ask Mr. Koenders for his introduction to Mrs. Tsikhanouskaya. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kisha. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, distinguished guests, it's for me really a great honor to open this evening's October lecture, and that on the occasion of Raam's 10th anniversary, by introducing an outstanding, most courageous personality whose struggle is now at the heart of Europe's contest between democracy and authoritarianism. We welcome tonight, we heard it already, and it's great to see you here in our capital, President-elect Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya of Belarus. Yes, let's do this again. Good to see you again. Mrs. Tsikhanouskaya is, of course, the key leader of the democratic movement of Belarus. At great personal risk, she and her like-minded compatriots are fighting against the dictatorship of Lukashenko. As we all know, the autocrat who, through increasingly blatant election fraud, has held power now for 31 years and rules the country with growing brutality. Mrs. Tsikhanouskaya never sought this role. She took on this heavy responsibility 5 years ago after her husband, Syarhei Tsikhanouskaya, was imprisoned simply because he, along with several other Democrats and reformers in his country, intended to run as a candidate in the 2020 presidential elections. And as punishment, Syarhei Tsikhanouskaya was imprisoned, kept in isolation for 5 years, together with many others. And in Belarus, more than 1,000 political prisoners are now detained, an unprecedented number, as we know, in Europe and actually in the world. While your husband was imprisoned, Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya stood as a presidential candidate. And it's, I think, now 5 years ago, together with Maria Kolesnikova and Veronika Tsepkalo, she traveled all over Belarus as a candidate, as part of a troika, to speak with all segments of society and give their compatriots hope. The hope that this time their voices might actually count. Their program was brilliant in its simplicity. Free and fair elections, not more and not less. And although Lukashenko controlled the election commissions and ballot boxes, Tsikhanouskaya won the election decisively. The citizens of Belarus no longer wanted to hide their aversion to the Lukashenko regime. And backed by Putin, Lukashenko refused to yield, not even when thousands and thousands of Belarusians took to the streets night after night after night. And only through unrestrained and brutal violence, Lukashenko ultimately could prevail. President-elect Tsikhanouskaya was forced into exile with her children. The regime in Minsk sentenced her in absentia to 15 years in penal colony. Veronika Tsepkalo also fled and was sentenced to 12 years. Maria Kolesnikova refused to leave the country, received 11 years in a penal colony, and is still being held in isolation. We know it. Lukashenko does not shy away from torture and murder. For 5 years now, Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya has been the standard bearer of a more democratic Belarus. And together with the United Transitional Cabinet, she's shaping the contours of that new Belarus, a Belarus in which 10 million citizens can freely determine their future within a European context. And such a Belarus is not only in their interest, of course, first and foremost, but also in ours. Belarus is not some colonial outpost of the Tsar in Moscow. I don't think anybody would say that here. It's not a military bridgehead for the Kremlin. Belarus has its rich history, often a tragic one because of its geographical setting. But thanks to its well-educated population, combined with its economic foundation and rich history and culture, the country offers genuine prospects and hope for its citizens and also for the wider Europe. Belarus lies at the heart of Eastern Europe, like its neighboring countries, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, and the Ukraine. It occupies a linchpin position in European geopolitics. A country with a regime that continues to suppress all forms of dissent, independent media, civil society, and political expression. Torture, disappearances, and abuse in detention are widespread. Belarus must be given the opportunity to open the door to Europe. And that cannot happen with Lukashenko, but only with new Democrats, a new generation that shows so much courage. More than 10 years ago, the former National Security Advisor to US President Jimmy Carter explained how Russia plays the role of a parasite in its neighboring states. With Ukraine subordinated, Russia automatically becomes an empire. Without Ukraine, Russia ceases to be an empire, said Zbigniew Brzezinski, who died recently. That is why Ukraine is now embroiled in an existential war with Russia. For Putin, there is no alternative between being an empire or a vassal. And that has to change. The right of self-determination is not an outdated topic or subject or concept. To the contrary, it is essential for any community striving towards democratic rule of law. And that includes, of course, Belarus. What happens in Belarus is also crucial for all of us in Europe. Mrs. Tsikhanouskaya, we are immensely grateful that you are here this evening to be with us, to take this time to address us and to inform us about the democratic movement in Belarus, about the dangers you face personally and the risks you see, but also the opportunities you work on every day. Welcome again to Amsterdam, to the Netherlands. Madam, the floor is yours. Good luck.
So, dear Mr. Bert Koenders, dear Keisha, dear friends, dear supporters of Belarusians, it's really an honor for me to speak here in Amsterdam at this beautiful former clandestine church, which became a symbol of freedom of thought. In today's Belarus, any kitchen or private house where people gather to discuss the latest news, to read Belarusian books, to learn Belarusian language, or to sing folk songs is a space of free thought, a space of resistance. Free thinking is considered extremist in Lukashenko's Belarus. It can get you in prison. And I dream of a time when there will be fewer prisons in Belarus and more places like this one. Of course, I thank the RAM platform for the invitation and thank you all for your interest in Belarus. I'm glad that our part of Europe, which long existed in the shadow of Russia, has become closer to the West. I'm not glad that this is happening under such a tragic circumstances as Russian aggression against Ukraine. You know, in the Western Europe, due to Lukashenko's pro-Russian politics, Belarus is often perceived as part of Russia. But what if I told you that Belarus is a country with a long European tradition? It is like forgotten Europe. Did you know that the modern Cyrillic alphabet was created here in Amsterdam? It was designed by Belarusian Protestant called Ilya Kopievich in early 1070s. He worked as a publisher here, printing books with both Latin and Cyrillic letters. When the Russian Tsar Peter the Great met Kopievich, he asked him to print grammar books also in Russian, so that Russians could learn their language too. At that time, Belarusian book printing tradition was already 2 centuries old, dating back to the Renaissance. Belarus, then part of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, was a country much more advanced than Russia, economically, culturally, and politically. Belarusian nobles, together with Polish and Lithuanian ones, elected their kings in a democratic way. Like the Dutch, we used to live in an elective monarchy, and our statute of 1588, written in Belarusian language, was an inspiration for the first European constitution, the Polish one, adopted in 1791. So in short, Belarus is not Russia and never has been. Belarus is Europe. After 70 years of Soviet occupation, Belarus regained its independence in 1991. But the period of freedom was very short. A man with a dictator's ambitions came to power and turned Belarus away from the path to democracy. I will not lead my nation where the civilized world goes. It's Lukashenko's famously declared. That was probably the only political promise that he ever fulfilled. Today's Belarus is a very odd mixture of Soviet legacy and European spirit. An Italian journalist called it communism with a taste of cappuccino. Because sometimes it feels like Belarus is stuck in time. Because where else can you find McDonald's right next to KGB? Yes, we still have KGB in Belarus. Close to prison for political hostages. Or where can you find a modern Tesla's parking near Soviet-time Lenin's monument? And this hypocrisy is everywhere in Belarus. If you don't look deeper behind walls, you will not even differentiate dictatorship from a normal country. Dictators are usually masters of wrapping outdated goods in brand new packages. Squeezed between West and East, European Union and Russia, Belarus was always on the front line, between democracy and tyranny, and in the center of wars, repeated clashes of civilizations. But never before, the question of geopolitical choice, stood so high as now. The pro-Russian regime of Aliaksandr Lukashenka, ruling Belarus for 30 years, chose Russia and traded away Belarus' independence in exchange for Moscow political protection. His system, Lukashenko's system, survived not on innovation or competitiveness, but on cheap Russian oil and gas and endless loans from the Kremlin. For 30 years, Lukashenko has mastered the art of playing geopolitical seesaw. We often joke that in winters he becomes pro-Russian to secure cheaper resources, while in summer he suddenly turns pro-Western to get financial assistance from the European Union and US. To suppress those who disagree, he has built the Soviet-style system of repression and fear. His political opponents have been murdered, imprisoned, or driven into exile. But first of all, everything started with silencing the media, so that no one knew for sure what was happening. For 3 decades, Belarus was like a black spot on the map of Europe, forgotten and isolated. Too often, behind Lukashenko, the world fails to see the best of Belarus, its people. While the dictatorship was building its prisons and police stations, building a totalitarian state, the society developed its own way, Western way, European way. Belarusian society has outgrown dictator. And 5 years ago, we saw its blooming on the streets of Belarus, when millions of Belarusians rose up against dictatorship. And this is where my personal story has started. I was an ordinary woman bringing up 2 wonderful children. It was already told a little bit, but when my husband, a blogger, after announcing his presidential ambitions, ended up in jail, I decided to run in his place. You know, when your loved ones are in danger, so you don't wait for someone else to act. You stand up. The regime registered me as a candidate as a joke, I think, because our constitution is not for women, Lukashenko always said. But I think that that joke became his fatal mistake. We, Belarusian people, won that elections with more than 60%. Even the savvy dictator couldn't longer hide this truth. We organized an alternative vote count that proved our victory. The regime stole our victory, but the people said their decisive no. And in every city, people took to the streets. Not just politicians. They were factory workers, students, nurses, priests, grandmothers, teenagers. They came holding flowers, holding each other, and chanting one word: enough. But like every dictator, Lukashenko refused to step down. Supported by Putin, he unleashed brutal terror that Europe hasn't seen for decades. Thousands were beaten, arrested, and tortured. Dozens were killed. Hundreds of thousands had to flee. And this terror continues till this very day. As we speak, every single day, from 10 to 15 people are being detained. Moreover, the dictator dragged Belarus into the Russian war against Ukraine, of course, against the will of Belarusian people. It was from Belarus that Russian tanks rolled on Kiev. It was from Belarus that the first Russian missiles flew to hit Ukraine. And our country became a launching pad for war, while 9 million people were taken hostage by 2 aging dictators. Meanwhile, Belarusians quickly mobilized to help Ukraine. They organized sabotage against the Russian military, and many went to fight for Ukraine as volunteers. And we made our stance clear. We are against the war, and we stand with Ukraine. You know, looking back from today's perspective, I often think that if our uprising had succeeded in 2020, Russia's invasion on Ukraine might never have happened, and history could have taken a very different course. Putin's plan to restore the Russian Empire could have been ruined. You know, in his chauvinist frenzy, the Russian dictator doesn't see Belarus and Ukraine as independent nations. He wants Ukraine to be the same as Lukashenko's Belarus, controlled and loyal. Otherwise, Russia would lose its direct access to Europe and couldn't keep it under threat. When Russian writer Sergei Lebedev spoke here last year, he talked about impunity. In Russia, Stalin's crimes, such as famine in Ukraine, were never fully admitted, nor openly condemned by the state. And it is the same story with Belarus. Lukashenko glorifies Stalin. And each year, 29th of October, Belarusians commemorate our intellectuals, writers, scholars, politicians, who were executed at Stalin's order in 1937. More than 100 of them were shot during a single night. It is called the Night of Shot Poets. These killings were never condemned by Lukashenko. Instead of commemorating the victims, he commemorates executioners and continues what Stalin did, destroying our national identity. Our Nobel Peace Prize winner, Ales Belyatsky, is in jail. Another Nobel Peace Prize winner, Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya, was forced to exile. Our patriots like Roman Bondarenko, Witold Dashurak, or Ales Pushkin were killed. A dozen political prisoners lost their lives behind bars due to torture or lack of medical assistance. And those crimes have never been prosecuted, but I'm sure that one day they will be. Impunity is not an option for Belarusians. Today, Lukashenko is selling our sovereignty to Russia for the sake of staying in power. Lukashenko and Putin may hate each other, but they need each other. It is like a symbiotic relationship. Without Putin, Lukashenko wouldn't survive for a single day. You know, like a scuba diver without an oxygen tank. And it is naive to think that we can split them. It is also naive to think that we can re-educate them or appease them. Believe me, dictators don't seek peace. They need wars because they fuels their regimes and serves as false justification for terror. Today, the fate of Belarus largely depends on the geopolitical context. We understand that if Ukraine wins, we will have another chance too. And if Ukraine loses, it will be difficult to snatch Belarus from the claws of the Russian bear. In 2020, it seemed that everything depended on us. But today, Belarus became a part of a bigger problem. We can't go to the protest openly today, but we can prepare for new momentum, and I'm sure that it will open a new window of opportunity for us. And we are, as movement, as nation, we are doing everything possible to bring this moment closer. I'm absolutely sure that Belarus can be a success story. This big story will be composed of little personal stories of every one of us, and some of them will go down in history. For example, stories like that of Natalia Suslova, a professor of Russian literature from Gomel University. Her son, volunteer Pavel Volod Suslov, was killed by Russian aggressors in Ukraine. And Natalia, being a teacher, she went to Ukraine to become a true mother to his brothers in arms. And stories like that of Maria Zaitseva, for example, whose blood-covered face in 2020 became one of the iconic images of police brutality in Minsk. After her wounds were healed, Maria went to defend Ukraine, and she was killed in battle in January this year, just one day before celebrating her 24th birthday. Or, for example, stories like that of 69-year-old politician Mykola Statkevich, who spent 12 years of his life in Lukashenko's prisons. When he was released a month ago, he refused to be deported to Lithuania and returned to Belarus. He rejected freedom in the name of his dignity and love to his country. With people like this, I have no doubt that we will see the day when Belarus will be free. Dear friends, in conclusion, maybe I want to share several pieces of advice and lessons learned during my short and accidental political career. First, I urge all the people who live in democratic countries to cherish what you have. Because often people living in democracy take it for granted. But in countries like Belarus or Ukraine, we know its true price, because we sacrifice everything for it. Freedom is never guaranteed. It is so easy to lose, and it's so hard to get back. It must be protected, it must be nurtured, fought for again and again and again. Second, never stop looking for the truth. Never stop asking the questions. Never stop learning. Keep an open mind and use the amazing tools available today. The goal of tyranny is to make you confuse truth and lies. Third, never lose hope. Maybe hope alone is not enough, but it is something that keeps you afloat in the most difficult moments. Those who were recently released from Lukashenko's prisons said that it was only hope that helped them to survive. And fourth, listen to your heart as well as your mind. Empathy, compassion, and solidarity is our greatest superpowers. You know, sometimes life puts you in such circumstances when you just have to act. So don't hesitate to do the right things. And finally, no one war and no one fight can be won if you are alone. You always need friends and you always need allies. You need a common efforts. So the fight for democracy is not the local one. It is a global one. And the greatest threat to democracy is not always violence. It is often fear, doubts, fatigue, loss of hope, and simply forgetting who we are and what we stand for. So let us renew our commitment to freedom. The Belarusian people haven't given up, and neither should the democratic world. Together, for sure, we will prove once again that the power of the people can change the history. Thank you. Живи Беларусь!
Thank you so much. It was very nice. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for this inspiring lecture. Maybe first, can you show who is on your folder? Can you explain?
So first of all, I have to say that for 5 years, I always hold the folder with the picture of my husband, because my husband was jailed for 5 years. Recently, he was, so-called released and forced into exile. But I think that my folder became a good tradition to attract attention to political prisoners. Today, I have with me our Nobel Peace Prize winner, Aliaksandr Lukashenka, who many years ago organized Human Rights Defenders Center Vesna, that is active until now. And while they are leader in the prison, this Human Rights Defenders Center continues to help political prisoners, their families, and doing really a huge job. So I want to believe that Aliaksandr will go through all the difficulties and challenges in prison, because political prisoners are really treated awfully, and soon, he will be released, and we will see him and can greet him, because he is a real outstanding person. So today he's here.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I was very much inspired by your lecture, and I was wondering, because you live in Lithuania, but you travel all over the world, how do you manage to keep in contact with people inside Belarus? Is it still possible to talk to them? How do you learn about their experience, their hopes, their fears? How is it possible still to communicate with them?
Since 2020, we understand that so many people had to flee Belarus because of repressions, but our nation, our people, they are in Belarus. And it was one of our priorities of our work is to stay connected to people inside the country. God bless internet. We have so many possibilities, to communicate to people on the ground through chats, through Telegram, Instagram, so on and so forth. And what is more important, we get, feedback from Belarusian people. Of course, it's such huge danger when people inside the country read honest news or deliver some information to those who are in exile, but they are doing this. And
yeah. Is er een arts in de zaal? Vast wel, ja. Yeah, there is a medical need for a doctor upstairs. Sorry for interrupting. Okay, it's okay. Yeah? Okay. Sorry.
So it's extremely important for us to stay connected to the people.
Yes.
But
you were saying it's very dangerous, of course, for people inside the country.
Yeah, for people, it's very dangerous to communicate to those who are in exile, because Lukashenko's regime is trying, to divide those who left. They betray us, they are not our citizens, and those who left. Yes, they consider them to be slaves, voiceless, but it's still, you are here. And our task is to talk, to communicate to people. We really don't want people inside the country to be poisoned by propagandistic narratives. Mm-hmm. And that's why, media are so important. That's why it's so important to support alternative, independent media for them, to deliver honest news. And also I have to say here that, Belarusians living in Belarus, they are like our local intelligence. They are informants. They deliver us information what is happening on the ground. And moreover, people of the system, nomenclatura, authorities who, working on Lukashenko's regime, they also deliver us information, because they understand that Lukashenko is a dead end for our country. He's selling our independence, sovereignty, and they want help us to become stronger. They deliver us information how, for example, sanctions are circumvented, or how Lukashenko earning money on the blood of Ukrainians, producing military stuff for a Russian war machine. How could we get this data? only thanks to people who work in there. So connection is here, of course. Now people cannot be vocal in Belarus, and just those who are in exile have to do the work, also for those people, for the voiceless. But it doesn't mean that people gave up. I'm just asking, look, you don't have to sacrifice yourself now. Just keep your fire inside until the moment comes, because we will need each of you. All those who are still resistant. We still have, small, different groups inside the country who work undergroundly, make small acts of sabotage, or again, deliver information. But, keep your energy alive till the moment.
But the energy is still there, you say, yes. I wanted, if possible, to have a look at the picture from 5 years ago. This was in Minsk in August. I was wondering, in those days when hundreds of thousands of people took to the streets after this election, did you ever have genuine hope that Lukashenko would give in to the protests?
Maybe I have to confess that maybe we were too naive, thinking that, if dictator will see how many of us on the streets, we were peacefully demonstrating, we were demanding only free and fair elections. This is what we wanted. So we thought that if he sees this, so he will say, no, okay, okay, I'm giving up, I'm leaving. Of course, we underestimated his desire to stay in power, underestimated brutality of this regime. Many of people on this picture are newbies in politics. For many, many years, we were silenced. We preferred not to interfere into politics because it was always dangerous. But 2020 was outstanding, because people saw each other. People realized that I'm not the only one who changes. There are millions of us. It was such a wave of solidarity. I think that our nation actually reborn, back then. But also there might be external factors that influenced our situation, because we didn't know at that time that in Putin's plan, to attack Ukraine, and Putin needs loyal Lukashenko to provide our territory, our infrastructure for invasion of Ukraine. And that's why Putin supported Lukashenko politically and economically back in 2020. And of course, it has had huge impact on the moods, of the people. And at that moment, there was no decisive European voice, from our partners, from our allies. Putin said I'm for Lukashenko, and people were one-to-one, with our prize and with our resistance. Only couple months later, maybe already after New Year, it was first sanctions that were imposed by Europe, first strong voices that were on the side of democratic Belarus, so on and so forth. But this repressive machine was already so brutal. People have been detained daily, so it was difficult. We lost, those time. We didn't have big allies around us.
But you, as I listen to you, I understand that in those days you had this hope that it could happen, and I was wondering, do you still think back about these moments? Does it inspire you to do your work, or because you mentioned we were naive in those days, you realized that you had to change tactics and to become much more politically active and travel all over the world?
Though some people say that we have to stop thinking about 2020, it was 5 years ago, we have to live further. I think that we have to remember 2020, because it was a moment of unification of the family, of the people. We felt each other. We saw each other's eyes. We felt such huge solidarity. In inside the nation, we realized actually ourselves as nation. We realized that we have to protect what Lukashenko is ruining. So, of course, 2020 inspires me personally. Bravery of people in 2020 until now inspire me, because every day I see small acts of bravery inside the country and abroad. People under huge repressions in Belarus, transnational repressions are intensifying, and even people who act from exile, they have property in Belarus, they have relatives, mothers and fathers in Belarus, they are under attacks. And it needs such a bravery, to stand and, tell the truth, knowing that, somebody can be affected by your activity, but people doing this. So I think that 2020 already, of course, in our history, it reshaped, it was big, shift of mindset of Belarusians back then, and it hasn't changed. Maybe it is people in a safe mode at the moment, but people haven't forgotten, people haven't forgiven what regime has done. People still, inspired by sacrifice of those people who were killed, after 2020, our brave political prisoners who are behind the bars. So we don't have alternative only to continue our fight, because the only alternative is to give up. And those people who are in prisons at the moment, they rely on us, they believe in our strength, they believe in democratic, powerful world, and this belief, helps them to survive now in this Lukashenko's gulag. So, yeah, every day is inspiration, but of course, when I seen these pictures and videos from 2020, just you start to recall what has been happening and see familiar faces and understand that so many of these people now in jails or had to flee but continues to resist. So.
You mentioned that, of course, it was not your choice to become the opposition leader, the president-elect, but effortlessly and tirelessly you've been traveling around the world. Somebody told me that now for the 5th or 6th time you've talked to the Dutch government, afterwards. I was wondering, in all those contacts with all those politicians over the years, do you experience any change in their attitudes? Because you told us your lessons to us, how we should cherish democracy. Do you get enough support from the other way around? Do you feel that you have this support from all the Western leaders?
First of all, I have to say that my work is not about traveling around. My work, first of all, is to keep unity of democratic forces, democratic movement. Our task is to keep our alternative institutions of power that we built in exile sustainable and trustworthy. Because for these 5 years we really achieved a lot on political arena. We launched the government-in-exile. We have proto-parliament, we have proto-government, we have office of president-elect, and this system became visible on international arena. Now, for these 5 years, we managed to formalize relationship with many countries, like USA, Canada, UK, with European Union. We are working with all the parliaments, everywhere. We have groups for democratic Belarus. We maybe urged international institutions to make unprecedented steps towards Belarus. We are part of European institutions like Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, for example. So we built this agency of democratic forces. And of course, traveling around is part of my job because it's very important to keep Belarus high on the agenda. Because there are so many crises in the world, like Ukraine, Gaza, everywhere, like conflicts. And to keep interest to Belarus provides us political support, solidarity, technical assistance, to our movement. And we have to be we ourselves as democratic movement to be prepared for changes, but also to prepare our democratic partners for this moment of opportunity. Because in 2020, our partners didn't have strategy on Belarus. Now, when the moment comes, we all have to have this strategy. So that's why advocating for Belarus, advocating for release of political prisoners, for advocating for European perspective for our country is essential parts of our work. You know, it's so easy. You know, attention span is rather short. You know, it's so easy to forget about Belarus, especially if there are no visible proofs that resistance is still on the ground. And our task to show that behind this visible silence there are bravery of people, there is resistance. And just to also to explain that Belarus is not only a humanitarian issue, because very often, you know, people think political prisoners, repressions, you know, jails, oppression. But now you have to look on Belarus also from a security point of view. When the war has started, it became evident that Lukashenko became a co-aggressor in this war, that Lukashenko is providing our territory, our infrastructure for Russia to invade Ukraine, and who knows what ambitions Russia has. We already see drones over Poland, you know, Estonia. They are testing the borders, and Lukashenko is in service to Putin. He will be ready to provide our land for all possible attacks. And our democratic allies, European allies, first of all, have to understand that until Lukashenko is there, he will serve to Putin. He will not serve to the interest of Belarus. And he will be constant source of threat, blackmailing, intimidation, not only for Belarusians, but also for our neighbors, first of all. And as I said in my speech, free and democratic Belarus is in the interest of Europe as well. We are part of European family of countries. We want to return to Europe, but don't overlook Belarus. Don't leave Belarus for one day later. Because, of course, we all thinking about Ukraine. We need Ukraine to win this war. But don't give Belarus as, you know, as consolation prize to Putin. Lukashenko is serving to him, so maybe, you know, we have to leave Belarus alone. No, Belarus is not Lukashenko. Belarus is Belarusian people who want European future for ourselves, and our European future is in the interest of Europe as well. So that's why all these messages we have to repeat endlessly. Because, you know, everything is forgotten very fast. You know, new governments are coming, new parliaments are changing, and you have to rediscover Belarus for each new minister or prime minister or president. And, you know, it's important for us, that's why we are doing. But, of course, you know, working on Belarusian movement, on working with diaspora all over the world. That's also a big part of our resistance, is like work on daily basis.
It's maybe a bit of a strange question, but I was wondering, what would happen if all of a sudden Lukashenko would die tonight? Would you go back, would it be possible for you to go back to Minsk? Would Putin put somebody else in his place immediately? This must have crossed your mind. What would happen?
So, of course, there can be many scenarios of changes in Belarus, and one of them is natural reasons. Lukashenko is not immortal, we all understand this, and you know, if, for example, he dies this night or night after, it will be very short window, you know, to start this process of changing in Belarus. We understand that if everything is at place, but, you know, Lukashenko is passing away, Putin's interest in Belarus evident. But we, on our side, we have our allies who can be mediators, you know, in communicating to regime people. There are so many people in the nomenclatura and authorities who also want changes, and we are appealing to them already now that independence and sovereignty of Belarus is also in your interest. And if you didn't commit any heavy crimes against Belarusians, you are part of our nation. You can continue to work within Belarus. So at that moment, it will be also like resistance who will win, or pro-Putin's part of this system, or pro-European.
But you are ready for this moment.
We are preparing, of course, but we understand that the process can go differently. But our task is to have prepared institutions, alternative institutions. We are ready. Our democratic partners have to be prepared. Of course, we alone will not go to Belarus because we will be immediately jailed. But if with us will come powerful leaders of democratic countries who will come and make proposal, to people of the regime that, we have alternative to Russian world. We want Belarus to be part of our family. It will be better proposal for those people, for pro-regime people at the moment. So difficult to say. I want to believe that we are prepared. But there are so many obstacles that can influence any scenario. Different scenario, Putin will die. Are we prepared for this? Something else will happen.
You mentioned, of course, your husband being freed after 5 years, and I wanted to show some pictures of his release, and after that we see a press conference that two of you gave soon afterwards, in which your husband is talking now about your daughter not recognizing him. Of course, I would be interested to know in how you're doing now, but I also wanted to show this because there are so many political prisoners, as you mentioned, over 1,000, that are still waiting for this moment that they can see their loved ones. Maybe first on a personal level, I was wondering how you're doing, because this is only a few months ago.
I think that for every family, releasing of their beloved or their relatives, it's like a new step of their lives. Because my husband was absent, he was in isolation for 5 years, and we also have to go through this process of reunification of the family, because political prisoners, they are after prisons, they are broken physically. They're in extremely bad physical condition. Most of them are not broken morally. They are very strong. They want to dive into struggle immediately. But we understand that there are no ex-political prisoners. That experience that they got in prison, it will stay with them, forever. So my task as a wife is to take care, of my husband, my children, trying to spend as much time with their dad as possible, because they lost 5 years without him. But of course, as all the political prisoners who are just released, they thinking about those who are left, because they just, were in the same situation, and they don't want to wait. They don't want any rehabilitation. They want, to go to barricades and fight for the release of the rest, and it's fully understandable. So my husband, he's now giving interviews. He wants to shout to the world why our political prisoners is not yet released. Why are you sleeping? He's of course we explain him the reality. We explain what we have been doing all these 5 years, and everything is not so easy. But now he's, for example, in the USA, meeting with the Belarusian diaspora. They has meetings in State Department, keeping this topic alive. So look, it's not easy, but I think that if there is love, if there is like respect, you know, to the relatives, to the beloved, so we can overcome everything. You know, it's difficult to stop him. I say, can you please come down and you know, go to a sanatorium to relax a little bit, because you know, 5 years in isolation. But as he himself says, I kept silence for 5 years. Now I need to talk. Now I need to tell, you know, their stories. So honestly speaking, he hasn't chosen his path yet, or either he is going to be a blogger as he used to be before 2020, or he wants to go to politics. You know, it's up to his choice. But one thing that I noticed is what those people who were like in freedom, you know, all these years, we experienced emotions that our political prisoners couldn't experience, because altogether we were on these beautiful rallies. You know, we saw the murder of Roman Bondarenko. We were mourning with his family. We saw the beginning of the war. We saw Bucha. We saw how Ukraine was attacked by Russia. You know, we saw solidarity of Europe with us, all these, you know, acts of empathy, you know, towards, and Belarusians who were in isolation in prisons. You know, it was just were text messages for them. The war has started. You know, somebody told about political prisoners. So this is huge gap in emotional perception of these 5 years, and it will take time, you know, to understand what has been happening, what has been done during these 5 years. But hopefully, you know, step by step, they will realize and contribute, start to contribute to our fight themselves.
Your husband was freed after American pressure by Mr. Trump. So I guess on the one hand, you're happy about this. On the other hand, we know that Trump, for instance, stopped financing the civil society in Belarus, as in all other countries abroad. So do you have any idea what Trump's vision on Belarus is for the future?
You know, for all these 5 years, we really enjoyed transatlantic unity, unity of the positions towards Belarus. And we always enjoyed support of both, bipartisan support, both in Senate and Congress, and of course in European Union. President Trump has, you know, kind of transactional approach, transactional policy. And of course we are so grateful to President Trump, his administration and State Department. They now, thanks to their diplomatic efforts, many people's lives are saved at the moment. And this process of releasing is continuing, you know, process of negotiation. There are many buts, you know, in this process, because, for example, people who are released, they are not really released. They're forcefully deported to other countries, and it's a big problem. People don't have choice either to stay in Belarus or leave the country. The quantity of people, of released people, is like not big. It's about 100 people. We still have at least 1,300. Real number might be much higher, because there are so many people we don't know about who are detained on politically motivated cases. And the issue is that while releasing some political prisoners, regimes are detaining more and more and more. So, of course, we are in constant communication with our American partners, with State Department, and of course they understand that it's, for Lukashenko, it might be endless bargain and chip, you know, goods, you know, and he can detain more and more. And our goal is to stop repressions, you know, to stop them. And but you know, American approach that we have to go step by step towards that point. So we really appreciate their efforts, and honestly speaking, I think that there are no other country in the world where President Trump is personally involved into the release. Here, we have to understand that European pressure, European sanctions that are working on regime, they are much, much stronger than American ones. And if the USA will lift some sanctions or make some deal with Lukashenko, it will not have strong impact on well-being of Lukashenko without European sanctions. So that's why Europe is our safeguards here. And that's why we urge our European partners stand strong and principled with your position. We have to achieve our goal, stop repressions and hold free and fair elections. Hold your cards with you at the moment. There will be a moment where you will have to play. I also have to underline that political prisoners are released, of course, thanks to diplomatic efforts of President Trump, but also thanks to 5 years everyday support and solidarity of European Union. So it's our common achievement that people are gradually being released. So, that's why we encourage the Americans to continue their humanitarian track, but see this consistent and principled policy of European Union as the most effective one. And actually, honestly speaking, I don't see any appetite from European countries to change their policy. For Lukashenko, this communication with the USA, it's attempts to show normalization, legitimization. Look, I'm talking to Americans, and of course they want to ruin unity of European Union. There was maybe temptation to start conversation with Lukashenko. There are so many lobbyists who are working on these narratives. Let's work with Lukashenko. Maybe we'll be able to drag him from Putin. No, it's misperception. Lukashenko cannot be split from Putin. They have this symbiotic friendship. Lukashenko will always serve to Putin because it's guarantee of his at the moment staying in power. So stay strong, Europe. Be bold. Be decisive.
Thank you. I think this is quite I think it's time for you, our audience, to ask questions that are still left. You've told already so many interesting things, but I can imagine that you have urgent questions. There is 2 people walking around with microphones, and they will come to you. There's already somebody here raising his hand. I would like to ask you to very briefly introduce yourself, and please, no long statements, but short questions so that we can answer, or you can answer as many as possible. Thank you.
Yeah, Ruben Bromet, student of Leiden University. There has recently been a lot of talk about a rather strange phenomenon of Litvinism. Would you care to explain your vision on this phenomenon and how effective you think it has been as a hybrid warfare technique by KGB?
So maybe for those people who are not involved in the context, at the moment I live in Lithuania. Lithuania, we had our joint history. We were part of Grand Duchy of Lithuania, and now we see the attempts of propaganda of the regime to split Belarusians and Lithuanians, because Lithuania is one of the bravest countries in our region who are supporting Belarusians, who are standing firm for democracy, who understand the strategic importance of free and democratic Belarus, and regime wants to ruin this unity. They want to split our nation, and they use these issues as Litvinism is fake dilemma. You know, we don't have at all, you know, these Litvinism ambitions. We fully respect geographical border integrity of Lithuania, and you know, we want to be reliable and good partners. But to cause this, you know, unpleasant feeling of Lithuanian people to Belarusians, they always like articulate this Litvinism. So Belarusians want to take Vilnius, capital of Lithuania, you know, back to Belarus or whatever, you know. It's just to ruin unity. The same they are doing on different subjects in Poland, in Latvia, because these countries, you know, trying to support us really, like, you know, in huge extent. So, no, I honestly have to say that propaganda has much more resources to attack us than we have resources to counter these attacks. Our media, our civil society organizations, we very limited in our, you know, in our space. We are like people without state at the moment. You know, we don't have like the same rights. You know, our documents are expired and we don't have possibility to renew the documents. We are like guests in Europe. We are supported by European countries. And of course, regime is spending huge amount of money on attacking democratic forces, you know, just to ruin us. So that's why we are working in Lithuania on different subjects. There are so many challenges, but we are trying to overcome all of them, you know, because we really respect all the assistance and help and political support we receive from all European countries. But sometimes it is difficult, honestly speaking. And we see how pro-regime people, they are physically attacking Belarusians on the territory of Lithuania, in Poland. So many people who are working in my office and other people are attacked by regime, you know, through the social networks, intimidating, you know, people, just for people to be afraid to do anything. But, you know, 5 years they're doing this. And resistance is still alive. We are strengthening agents of democratic forces. Our wonderful diasporas all over the world are working hard to help Belarusians with legalization, with different issues. When the last group of political prisoners were released and deported for one night, Belarusians donated 100,000 euros to help political prisoners, you know, to rehabilitate, you know, to accommodate them. So when there is a moment, a necessity, Belarusians are always helpful, always show solidarity. So that's why I'm sure when the moment of changes comes, you know, people will be on the streets, people will be in the streets of your cities, you know, and countries advocating for the interests of Belarus.
Thank you. Yeah, there was a gentleman here in front.
My name is Peter, and I was wondering, do you also coordinate and work together with the Russian opposition? And what do you think someone like Yulia Navalny? Thank you.
So, of course, we respect all the opposition movements all over the world who are opposing dictatorship in their countries. Of course, you know, time to time we communicate with different groups of Russian opposition, and we respect their work. Again, we and the Russians have rather different context, because in Belarus we won elections, we have legitimacy, our society is consolidated. We have like central democratic institutions. We build network of organizations, media that are working for one aim. We are doing our work together. For example, the Russians, they are more dispersed. There are so many different groups, but of course, it's their fight. They fight for changes in Russia, and we respect this. The only thing that we are asking from Russian opposition is that they have to declare very clearly that after changes in Russia, that should be their declaration, they will not continue their imperialistic ambitions, that they will respect sovereignty, territorial integrity of Belarus, Ukraine, Moldova, and other countries, and they will stop to perceive us, our nations, our countries, as naughty children who want to tie, this like family connection with Russia. So we need them to have this vision of our future relationship, but their fight is their fight. Of course, we share some tools, instruments, how we fight in media space, for example, or how we work with our democratic partners. But again, context is different a little bit.
Yeah, there was actually a gentleman on the second row here. Yeah.
Hello, Mark Duursma, journalist for a Dutch paper, NRC. Also a question about Lithuania, the country where you live, that just recently the Lithuanian government decided to reduce the level of your personal security detail, which must be quite painful, I guess. And just tonight I saw a tweet by Gabrielius Landsbergis, the former Minister of Foreign Affairs of Lithuania, who's very supportive of your cause and Belarus, saying that it's extended for 1 month now. But the question is, are you afraid that the support of Lithuania, which has been very strong till now, but can it change with this new government here?
Mm-hmm. And why was it, I had the same question, why was it decided to reduce your security?
The situation is a little bit more complicated than it is in media. Yesterday reduced, today renewed, increased. The situation, of course, we as movement, we have many challenges, ahead of us. It's not about Lithuania. For 5 years, Lithuania is so strongly devoted, to Belarusian cause. They are spending so much energy and time, to help Belarusian people, Belarusian nation. And their support shouldn't be concentrated on my personal support. It should be about our thrive for changes, for democracy. And there are no changes in politics of Lithuania. Lithuania actually launched, sent referral to International Criminal Court to start investigation against Lukashenka's crimes. Very strong step. On national level, they sanctioned transition of potash from Belarus, not to give Lukashenko possibility to earn the money. This is what small Lithuania is doing. Lithuania is an example for other countries what bravery and boldness is. So we are in communication, in negotiation, how we can, shape this new approach towards office of Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya. It's not about policy to Belarusian people. So, this situation is really intensified by, obviously, Russian propaganda and Belarusian propaganda. They want to show how Lithuania stopped supporting Belarusian people, stopped supporting, they want to change the policy. No, it's the situation in reality is not the same. So we are, we will fight regardless of the obstacles because we don't have choice. But our task is to make good relationship with Lithuania, Poland, and all the other countries who are supporting Belarusian cause. Our cause is not about one person. It's not about individual, it's about the whole movement, and we have to ensure political support to our movement, first of all.
More questions. It's a bit difficult for me to see with this light. I think, yeah, over there in the back.
Yes, Jeroen Buismond, may surprise you, but I am since 2003 Honorary Consul of Belarus. In 2016 I stopped the relation with the ambassador, and in 220 it fully stopped, and I moved to, through my contact, I'm also Secretary General of the International Council of Monuments and Sites, through the Belarus National Committee of ICOMOS, came in contact with Vladimir Ostapenko in Brussels, and I'm now supporting you. However, as Honorary Consul, I do get questions concerning the problems which Belarusians have here with passports, and more and more their passport is not any longer valid, and they have to go to Belarus itself to get a new one. I know it's an increasing problem. I see this also with the National Committee of ICOMOS, which is in Vilnius, as you know. And
can you
yes,
maybe
how do you see, because it's more and more difficult to get to, well, for the Belarusians who are abroad and who do not want to come back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
or they would like, but the risk is too high.
It's a familiar problem, I think, yeah?
Yeah, again, Belarusians, in exile, of course, they cannot enjoy, free world, because we face a lot of challenges abroad, and first of all, urgent problem with the legalization. The issue is that Belarusian regime refusing now to prolong or change Belarusian documents. If you have expired passport, you cannot go as usually you do in the Belarusian embassy in any country, just renew your documents. You cannot. It's forbidden, by Lukashenko. And now we have increasing number of Belarusians who cannot return to Belarus because they will be immediately detained, but whose passports are expiring or expired. And very soon we will have about 500,000 of stateless people without documents. And we have to solve this issue urgently. Because now, of course, when this problem started, we started to work on national levels with the countries where the most Belarusians are located, in Lithuania and Poland. And in Lithuania and Poland, they have solution to this problem. Passports of foreigners are issued. With some countries like Germany, for example, they have instruction to migration bodies that if a Belarusian with expired passport comes, they have to accept this expired passport. But we have to solve this problem on European Union level, because there are countries where there are no mechanism how to help Belarusians in such situation. And we're stuck with this issue. Belarusians cannot return to Belarus. They cannot legally stay in the country where they might lived for 10, 20 years, actually. So it's low collision. And we urge our partners, to sit and think how this problem can be solved. And actually, there is a document that is called Luxembourg Solutions, where all the problems of Belarusians abroad are accumulated, and there are recommendations for governments and parliament how to deal with the Belarusians abroad. Of course, we want all return home. We had to have possibility to return, but now we have this problem, and we are asking our partners to help us with this. Because when you only concentrated on your legal status, on your documents, you cannot contribute to our fight. You have to solve all these problems on a daily basis. So it's not the solved solution. There is no common solution to the problem. But actually, we as democratic forces, we are proposing solution to this problem. We launched unprecedented project that is called Passport of New Belarus. We are producing our own passports that are biometric, ICAO standardized, correspond to all the demands of European Union laws. And there is political will to recognize this document as ID, yeah. So, but it should be political decision. Now, maybe European structures don't see this problem as urgent, but the urgency is increasing, and we will one day we will face hundreds of thousands of people who don't have outcome of the situation.
Thank you. I think we have time for maybe one or two more questions. The most pressing ones. I leave it up to you. The guys with the mic are in charge. Sorry? Goede suggestie. Ja. A woman.
Hello, my name is Helen Flessing. I'm a lecturer in philosophy. You talked about a moment of change. Do you have a list of conditions that have to be fulfilled for the regime to be overthrown? Or is it a list of conditions for a peaceful transition? How do you see this?
Of course, we want transition in Belarus to go in a peaceful way. We really don't want any wars, any military uprising in Belarus, because I believe that peaceful changes are more sustainable. And of course, we, for example, look on the example of Poland, where they had round table between opposition and that time regime, and they agreed, to some formula, how to coexist together. So our proposal is to just organize free and fair elections where people can choose their candidates. But to start this dialogue on this negotiation, we need to see the steps from the regime. How can we talk about any dialogue if every day people are detained in Belarus? So first condition, for deep negotiations is stop repressions inside the country, because regime can take endless quantity of people as hostages and trade with these people. So, but to make this regime to stop repressions, we have to put this regime in such circumstances where they have to make these concessions, through pressure, through economic isolation, political isolation, so on and so forth. And look, again, we are not appealing towards Lukashenko. Lukashenko his time is outgoing. He is very fragile. He's like a lame duck at the moment. Of course, he wants to pretend he's important, he's a political player, he wants to pretend he's like key to the heart of Putin, but he's not. We are appealing to people who still work in the regime, who might have different interests from Lukashenko's one. Of course, Lukashenko has been building this system only for himself, for his own interest. He has personal security apparatus that is serving to him personally, not to Belarusian people. And of course, all those who committed heavy crimes have to be brought to accountability. But there are so many ordinary nomenclatura servicemen, who also want changes. So we're appealing to them. Stop supporting Lukashenko, think inside how we can bring Belarus to changes, what steps, can be done to, to start this dialogue, avoiding Lukashenko. And of course, we trying to keep diplomatic channels open with the pro-regime people. Of course, we ask our democratic partners not to send ambassadors to Minsk, not to legitimize Lukashenko regime, but on the middle or low level to communicate, on the level of Syarhei, for example, to communicate with representatives of the regime to understand what they want, in what the situation they are, what they're ready for. We already found like a joint topic we coincide in our desire. It's sovereignty and independence. They also want to preserve it, and they also say that Lukashenko is selling country to Putin, but it's against the will even of nomenclatura. So here on this basement we can hold dialogue or round table, and like we are working in this direction with our and American and European partners.
Thank you. Last question then.
Point it out, Kisha.
Huh?
Which one?
Yeah, you choose.
There.
Make it a good one.
Yeah. Well, Mrs. President, I was wondering, what can we as European citizens do to support the cause of a democratic Belarus, or supporting Belarusians, whether in Belarus or in the diaspora? What can we as ordinary people do?
Thank you.
I'm really grateful for this question because as I see, if we working with politicians, with parliamentarians, they more or less understand the situation, they're involved, they're trying on their level, you know, to do something for Belarus, but sometimes I see that we are losing societies. That you're not like living daily with thoughts about Belarus and even with the thoughts of Ukraine. I understand that sometimes you might have feeling of fatigue of all these difficulties that your countries have to support technically, you know, other countries. But I want you to understand one simple thing, that first of all, you have to cherish what you already have. We see how propaganda is trying to poison minds also of Europeans. Why do you need to help Ukraine? Why do you need to support Belarusians? Live your wonderful lives in democratic countries, don't interfere, it's not your business. Hold, I don't know, business-oriented policy, not values-oriented policy, you know. And you are, as a nation, you as a people, you live in democracy, you can influence your politicians. And if your politicians feel that society is supporting their activity on Ukraine, like, you know, solidarity to Belarus, they feel more confident. So you can talk to your parliamentarians, to your parliament, to your media, that yes, you have to support, because it's also our moral obligation to support those who are in need, because they're on the front line of fight between democracy and dictatorship. It's not their local problem, it's also our problem. So cherish what you have and encourage your governments to continue this, this policy of assistance, supporting people who are in need. Second, if you know somebody from local diasporas, you can help them to organize different events of Belarus. You can spread information among your neighbors, you know, friends, people on the work. You know, you can ask them to be, to tweet about Belarusians. Because very often you just don't know what is happening in Belarus. And only having friends, some Belarusians around you, you know their stories, but your task is to promote their stories, to, you know, inject more people with Belarusianism, you know. So for more and more people know what is happening and why it's so necessary, you know, to support Belarusian fight. So Yeah, this is from practically. If there is, you see the call for some solidarity to donate money, for example, to support a political prisoner or I don't know some activity. So take in your hands and with the help of your friends or neighbors, help to cover the cost, I don't know, of rehabilitation for one political prisoner. But keep your eye on the situation in Belarus and Ukraine. We are not so far away. We are really defending now Europe from these pro-Russian attacks. It's it's not our personal fight. Believe me, if we lose Belarus, if we lose Ukraine, it can be one of your countries that will be next. Your doors can be knocked by dictators and by tyrants. So defending us, you're defending yourself as well. Just you have to think about this. It's much easier, to pretend we are not seeing, we are not, listening. We don't say, because of course everybody wants to live in comfort. But look inside yourself. Do you really feel like this? Do you really ready to sacrifice your values just to live comfortably? Take an example of Belarus. So many years people lived in silence because they didn't want to interfere, thought that, what can I influence? I can do anything. But you can. And don't lose what you have, because again, on the example of Belarus, dictatorship can come very unnoticeably.
That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very nice to see. Thank you for being a great audience. Thank you for being a great audience. Thank you for being a great lecturer of this 9th October lecture. And if you can keep up this fight for so long, for us it should be easy to support you. So thank you so much, and keep up the good work. Thank you so much. The bar is open.
Thank you.